but that'll work better. When I film, it comes at a whole different frame.
Yeah, I know that one.
Okay, there we go.
Alright.
So, okay, what was the reason why you became a curator within the Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander art world?
In the art award.
In the art world.
Alright, sorry. It part and parcel with the job. Here I am, my name is Chico Monks, I'm a cultural arts teacher, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural arts teacher at Eora TAFE. I've been here for the last 15 years, and part of the job is to have exhibitions at the end, in the middle of the year, but also at the end of the year. So in parcel with that, as I've become much more of a full-time teacher here, I had to take on the responsibility of taking on a curatorial role. And a curatorial role here is different to every other place that you could be a curator.
How involved are you with the artists when you curate their work? Do you consider their opinions and suggestions?
Oh, I've just been interrupted by another student in the background, and he's just reminded me that I forgot to acknowledge country, which is a brilliant, I've got a brilliant student in the background. So thanks very much, Darren, acknowledging that this interview takes place on Gadigal land.
Yeah.
Big time.
Okay, so that's probably
Go
answers
again.
the question.
We'll go again with the question.
How involved are you with the artists when you curate their work? Do you consider their opinions and suggestions?
It's a wonderful thing. All of that comes into play. It's very important that they play a huge role, because I'm not only teaching people I feel here to be artists, but it's also curators, arts workers, teachers, absolutely everything. So it's a major negotiation process. But in saying that, because I am familiar with the majority of the students' needs, wishes, artworks, how they need to be hung, why they need to wear, all that sort of stuff, I have to make some sort of solid decisions in the end about it.
Fair enough. Okay. When working with artists from different communities, are you especially mindful of their different spiritual beliefs and standards? Are there any special actions you take to show this?
It's a good question, Hayley. Yeah. Spiritual needs, wishes. Teaching cultural art is like nothing else. We address everything you shouldn't within a school framework, or what I've been told. You don't deal with sex, drugs, rock and roll, politics, all that. We do absolutely all of that. And religion, spirituality, it's an ongoing discussion. Sensitivities are of an utmost importance, and I'm learning on the job. Yeah.
What excites you the most about curating Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander art?
What excites me the most? Well, in this, because I have curated outside of this framework too, but what excites me most about teaching within this and curating within this environment here is the honesty.
Yeah. So, and outside of this framework?
Outside of this framework, depending on the circumstances, like Bumali will be a different way of doing things, up at 107 projects within different places, like where else have we shown? Opera House and places like this. It's a different way of doing things. And go back to the question again.
So what excites you the most about curating Aboriginal art?
I suppose also seeing someone's confidence go from when I first meet them, I can't paint, can't draw, can't do anything, to I can, I am, here I go, watch me roll, I'm winning something. And that could just be showing and educating the viewer, or it could be winning a major prize at the Parliament Award, something like this.
Conversely, what challenges you the most about curating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art?
What challenges me the most? Older, that's a very tricky thing. Rites of passage in this day and age, rites of passage back in the past, taking all that into consideration. Health, mental, physical well-being, giving everyone a go. Understanding that people have other responsibilities outside of here, positive and negative, that impact on their life, and me trying to weigh it all up to see how we can showcase them in a respectful manner.
Have you experienced any problems when curating Aboriginal art?
Oh no, never. Just one.
Yeah.
No. Have I experienced any problems with curating Aboriginal art?
Not to reveal anything confidential.
Individual circumstance. Have I? Yeah. Well, as I get more and more confident doing it, I want to educate not only the student, but the audience. So it's this, I suppose, looking beyond the dot and looking at cultural diversity within Aboriginality. So yeah, it can get a little bit controversial. Also the idea that I know some of the mob just want to make some money, and I understand why. We live in Sydney, it costs a lot of money to be here. So it's that sort of, I don't want people to feel like they can sell their own culture short. And so yeah.
So just trying to like cater to what the audience wants.
Yeah,
and the buyer wants. For
sure. But also then valuing their own different mobs, valuing their needs. $50 for one person is different to $50 to another. You know it, I know it. These people might not know it.
Yeah. Okay, and last question. The MCA and the Art Gallery of New South Wales have now integrated Aboriginal artworks into the permanent exhibitions. Aboriginal works are now on display with other Australian modernist and contemporary works rather than segregated into their own section. Do you agree with this move, and what do you think it represents?
I don't know whether this is a new thing.
I don't necessarily think it's a new thing, but like in our class time, we have gone and visited these exhibitions.
And you've seen it integrated.
We've seen it. Yeah. We went and saw the MCA exhibition.
Yep. In their permanent collection.
And I think we saw the contrast between what was happening at MCA, how it was integrated, whereas the contrast between what's happening at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, how it's kind of segregated within its own separate space.
Has done in the past, will do. I mean, the big transition happened way back in the 50s when Tony Tuxton, the then Deputy Director of the Art Gallery of New South Wales, an artist in his own right as well, but he and a Dr. Stuart Scoogle, a philanthropist, it was the early 50s, they flew up to the top end and purchased off of the traditional owners from places like the Tiwi Islands, Bathurst, Melville Island, places like Yirrkala, up the top of Arnhem Land. They bought Aboriginal art. What's that?
The poles.
The Pukamani burial poles, of course, yeah. So those, and also a number of barks. So these then got placed into a gallery context rather than a museum context. So I'm not talking about the Museum of Contemporary Art one, the Australian Museum, that context. It got then presented on a contemporary gallery. That's when the major shift happened. And yes, at that stage it did set a lot separate to the other art. And so, and of late, I can see where you're getting at, that it's all merging together. It's becoming one, which is brilliant. Everything's got its positives and negatives. The brilliant side is that Aboriginal people are now also being really considered as people, contemporaries like everyone else, as well as tradition like everything else. Like it's all the same, humanity. But in saying that, it's sort of, because Aboriginal art is the biggest ism that ever hit the world of late, it's the biggest movement. So it sort of now is not only uplifting itself, it's carrying the weight of non-Aboriginal art, in my opinion. That'll do.
Thank you very much, Chico.
Sweet as.
You're a lifesaver.